People who have worked the drive-thru, what's the weirdest thing you've seen in someone's car? My gym teacher, drunk. He started eating the tacos at the drive-thru window. He was there for over 5 minutes, just eating. I saw him the next day in school. We both acted like nothing happened. Only worked drive-thru for a year, but the weirdest thing I saw was an alpaca in a minivan. They asked at the window if they could order some apple slices for the alpaca. I just gave them 2 packs on the house. Had a guy consistently come through the drive-thru with his ding-dong out and showing the young girls running the windows. He would always order the same thing, large mellow yellow no ice, always on a Sunday, and always wearing military fatigues. Then he stopped showing up for a bit. We called him Private Peters, as our little sign to call the cops if he showed up again. A month later we get an order for a large mellow yellow no ice, so I decide to take over the window because had a 16-year-old running cash, and sure enough he hands me his money with his dick in his other hand. We convinced the car in front of him to stay in the lane and we called the cops. He got suspicious and left, but they caught him and was charged. Dude had a full-on sex doll dressed up in his passenger seat. Sunglasses, dress and even a hat. I couldn't even tell it was fake until I asked for their order. Co-worker and I looked at each other simultaneously and we both said, was that a sex doll? This is in a wealthy area of my city as well, so it was definitely a first. Someone pulled a gun on my brother because the salsa containers weren't completely full. You can get as many as you want for no extra charge. I was working the drive-thru at Burger King in a snowstorm. Driver orders a Coke with no ice. When I hand them the Coke, they empty it a bit, break off a couple icicles hanging from the car, put in the Coke, and drive off without saying a word. Had a customer come through with a giant grandfather clock in the back seat. The thing was so huge it was sticking out the side window, which just so happened to be on the left side of the car. Which meant dude couldn't get close enough to the window to reach his food and had to step out, cursing the whole time. This is a recent headline from Arizona, where I live. Man, 70, was arrested with the body of his dead wife in his car after a stunned worker at a Carl's Jr. drive-thru in Arizona spotted him wearing only his underpants with the naked corpse upside down in the passenger seat. Someone threw a fish at me once. Didn't order anything, just a drive-by fish attack. I worked at a Tim Hortons and once saw an old lady with like 50 cartons of eggs in her car. I made a joke saying looks like you could make your own breakfast, and she got real straight-faced and said, oh honey, those aren't eggs. Still have zero clue what else you would store in egg cartons. I used to see someone come through with a lifelike mannequin in their passenger seat. I asked about it and turns out they did it to use the commuter lanes on the highway. You must have more than one person in the car or cop a fine. Had a drunk guy come through drive-thru. A cop car was in line right behind him. Told the cops about the drunk guy. He was blitzed and was going to kill someone. Cops said they knew as they were planning on pulling him over before he turned in and went to the drive-thru. They decided they were hungry and decided to get food too before pulling him over. They stayed at the back window and had us give them their food first so they could follow him out. Pulled him over in the parking lot. Was kind of entertaining. This girl used to come through with like 3 dogs. I finally asked her, do you have to feed these beasts? And she explained that she just walks and grooms them. Well, one day she came through the drive-thru with like 15 dogs and she screams through the intercom, my business finally took off and got a bunch of chicken tacos for them. Come to think of it, I think she may have been trying to flirt with me. Damn. There was this really cute blonde girl that would always come through the drive-thru naked on Saturday nights. Every now and then she would have another friend with her. We always knew when it was her by the constant giggles coming from her car as she ordered. We always had weird customers, being it was the world's largest McDonald's located in Orlando, Florida. An order for 88 Big Macs or 120 cheeseburgers was not out of the ordinary though. Story time. I was working the drive-thru at Carl's Jr. one evening as a very innocent 17-year-old. It was pretty close to closing time, sometime after 10 p.m. A car pulled up and some slightly slurred speech said something I didn't fully understand, but I heard the word food, and since it was the drive-thru it seemed like a safe assumption that they wanted to order food. It's not typical to ask if they can order food first, but I replied sure, go ahead when you're ready. They proceeded to order 4 people's worth of food and I gave them their total. What happened next was not something I was remotely prepared for. 4 slightly overweight to very overweight middle-aged women pulled up in their car, all completely topless. As sheepishly avoided looking, I repeated their total and one of them loudly reiterated what I hadn't fully heard initially. We said we wanna trade some tits for some food. Hold on a minute, I replied. I then walked back to where my manager was currently preparing their food. He asked if there was a problem and I said kind of, they need to talk to you. I'll wash up and take over for you here. I'm pretty sure he picked up on my distress and didn't argue or ask any more questions. By the time I finished washing my hands, he came back with a slightly annoyed look and told me I should just finish making their order and he would pass it out to them. I'm not sure if they paid or not, but I'm guessing my manager just wrote off the order so they would leave and no longer be our problem. We then had a decent laugh about it, but I was pretty horror-stricken at the time. I was working a McDonald's drive-thru in a small town in Michigan. This truck goes through, pays and pulls forward to get its meal. Then a chicken jumps out of the back. I yell for the next car in line to stop, but she looks confused and ends up running over the chicken. It's not dead but it's a wreck. She looks at me and we're both in tears. She says she has to and I say no. She puts it on reverse and backs over the chicken again. Another employees had to get a shovel and scoop up the dead chicken from the drive-thru. There was this woman that would come through and get a hot chocolate every day. Her name was Mary. Mary was an older gal in her 70s, drove an early 90s Lincoln, usually had some old tunes playing, and weighed 60 pounds, if that. She was always so happy and so nice. I always gave her drinks for free because it was always such a treat to see her and she was just so nice. One other feature I remember is she always rocked suspenders and a random colored fedora every day. I think she reminded me of Miss Frizzle after she retires. One day, she comes through and orders her usual. I said, Mary, why are you always in such a good mood? What's your secret? She smiles and waves me closer. I lean out of the drive-thru window and she says, really, really good drugs. She winks at me, turns her radio up, and cruises out of the parking lot. Mary is my hero. So we have 2 really crazy drive-thru stories. My family owns a franchise of a fast food chain. My brother is taking the drive-thru order. Lots of muffled talking as though it's a group of people trying to decide what to order, along with some shushing. Not unusual. Car pulls around to the window from the speaker. The trunk pops open and a guy jumps out and begins running like hell. 4 guys in the car jump out after him, tackle him in the street, throw him back in the trunk and speed off. The other one wasn't so much what was in the car, but I was working drive-thru while a very large local parade that goes down the street in front of the restaurant was happening. Towards the end of the parade, a nice convertible comes crashing through the parking lot, taking out signs and the drive-thru menu board. Turns out they had stolen the donated car from the parade route, and took it for a joyride through the parking lot. This girl, probably in her 20s, came through and had a bunch of Starbucks cups and other fast food trash piled up all the way to the ceiling of her car, in the back seat and in the passenger. It was so disgusting, but I just pretended I didn't see it. I worked a drive-thru at Arby's and a DEA agent came through in his squad car. When he pulled up to the window and I handed him his food and he thanked me, turned around into the criminal holding area and screamed, "Shut up before I break your nose." I was clearly mortified. Then he turned back to me and said, "Just kidding, there's nobody back there," laughed, and drove off. A dog with matching sunglasses to his owner. Was rad as fuck. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.